So the other day I posted a trailer to our upcoming server, and a lot of people wanted more information. Not only about the leveling in endgame, but many were skeptical about a new engine. So for this video, I'm going to be a little more specific about how the gameplay will be configured, but I'd also like to take some time and explain why I definitely think a new engine makes our server not only more stable, but more consistent in delivering content as well. So in a lot of ways, the foundation of how World of Warcraft really works as a game is that pretty much everything is a spell. Even spells you don't see play a big role in how events are executed. So when I notice problems like this in the Mango spell class, where they fix issues with spells by just jamming in a bunch of code specific to that spell, this is called pretty much a hack fix. It's really not a good sign. And the more you really look over the spell class, you find lots of problems with it. Probably the biggest problem I noticed was the spell target mapping, where it worked in most cases, but then there were those cases where it didn't work, and there was no chance that they were ever going to work, and no amount of changing to what they had set up was ever going to fix that, because there's, it's as if they designed the system before they really fully understood how it was supposed to work. Now, what that means is that there's 93 different ways the spell can decide who it's going to hit, and they've implemented all 93 of those, but really what's supposed to happen is there's actually two choices that a spell gets for each effect, and then it's supposed to combine those two choices. And see, that's the step that they kind of skipped. That plays a big role. And this, and that's just one example. There's a lot of really small details that I'd have to get very technical about code to really explain. But more or less, the spell class needed to be quite a bit different. And really, because of all my work that I had done on scriptcraft, I was in a really unique position where I had a really good understanding of how Blizzard spells are supposed to work, how the Mango spell class already worked, and where I could, how I could do things differently. And that kind of followed through in a lot of places, not just spells. The creature AI ended up being designed in a way that expected most spells to not work, and what they ended up doing was making child classes for each and every boss, which again is something Blizzard would never do. It's just more code, and that's really the heart of what I'm getting at. The more code you have, the more things you have that can go wrong. And really what you want to do is reuse as much functionality as possible. Take Battlegrounds, for example. What I noticed was that there was a big crossover between how they worked and how outdoor PvP worked. So Mangos has a Battleground class and an outdoor PvP class. Me, on the other hand, I just have a zone class that can be used for both. And that lended itself to other things as well, such as those buffs that affect, say, an entire zone and its respective dungeons. And with that, I ended up killing 3 birds with 1 stone there, and I did it with a lot less code. But in order to do that, the map class and its instances needed to be a lot different to accommodate this kind of stuff. But that worked out too, because there was issues in the map class that needed addressing as well. It needed to lend itself to kiting mobs long distances, seeing big creatures like Fell Reaver from far away, or updating and loading instances all at once instead of just by vision like it does in the world. But then changing the map class meant reworking other things, like the game event manager. But that was okay too, because it had its fair share of problems, and I also ended up making a little difference so I could reuse it in a way to spawn and despawn large amount of creatures. And really, this method of identifying problems, writing down what needed to be done, and cutting what got in the way deconstructed the whole code base until I had to make a decision if I really wanted to walk down what was going to be an incredibly long road. Suffice to say, I did, and the fruits of that labor really paid off, and it's the reason why complicated events like these, they don't need any additional code. I just punch in numbers and enjoy the results. So before I move on, let me talk a little bit more about how spells and AI work together. Because, a quick way to explain what was wrong with Mango spells was that they scripted creatures instead of spells, despite the fact that the spell DBC tells us that many spells run scripts on Blizzard servers. And after designing this, the way it was meant to be, designing AI the way it was meant to be became a lot easier. What you notice about mobs in WoW is that they sort of reflect their player classes. Mobs with bows act like hunters, some act like priests, warriors, mages. We kind of set that to run up in the background underneath the very basic AI that we give to creatures that never fight, like critters. Under that, I took the ideas from Mango's event AI, but instead of having it kind of overwrite everything, it just runs in the background, and it's only used for creatures who do something very specific, like casting a spell at low health or saying something on aggro. And finally, under that comes the more complex AIs for something like an escort quest. But we don't go any further than that. We don't make child classes for each escort event. And this is a design that made writing codes for events a thing of the past. which is, it's a big step in obtaining consistency and stability. So what this meant was that content could rapidly be developed, and implementing every raid, that wasn't even really a big deal anymore. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and talk a bit about how leveling and endgame raids and all that kind of stuff, how that's going to work on our server. So for leveling, it will be faster than normal Burning Crusade leveling, but it's not as simple as just saying, oh, well, it's ×2 or ×3. Implementing rates into our server would have been very easy to do, but it's a concept that I don't really recognize as being authentic. The game as a whole is a lot more complex than that, because as you level, you need to be getting enough gold to keep up with your purchases, your repairs, you need to be getting the right amount of drops to stay equipped, it needs to be possible to level your professions as you level, and we're definitely not in the business of just giving out skill points faster, or giving out more gold or more gear, because that's going to affect the end game in a big way. So we'll make it faster, but we're going to be doing it with very subtle changes, kind of in line with how Blizzard makes their leveling faster whenever they release a new expansion. But we'll definitely be affecting the game as a whole, not something like a flat rate. Now, as for endgame content, our goal is to replicate probably patch 2.1. That's definitely the best way to explain it. Only original badge gear is going to be available. You're going to have to farm heroics for primal nethers, vortexes. Those are only going to come out of the raids. They're not going to be tradable, that kind of stuff. Because what I saw in Burning Crusade, I saw a game that was jam-packed with content. I mean, bottom line, Black Temple was released before anyone had even killed Kale. There was no artificial gate slowing profession guilds down. Yeah, it was a little bit buggy, and that, definitely had an effect. But really, there was just a ton of content for them to chew on, and that's why it took so long before anyone really killed Illidan. Let alone Sunwell. That's going to take ages, because you're going to need a tremendous amount of gear that you have to farm from Black Temple. So with that being said, we will have every raid developed before the game is released. There's going to be attunements. Likely there's going to be one for Sunwell as well, because we have to be aware of Magister's Terrace. We don't want to be giving Magister's Terrace gear too easily, because then that's just going to trivialize Karazhan and Grohl. It'll probably trivialize even tier 5. So we have to be aware of that, as well as the Le Mans gear. And we'll go into more detail about that as we get closer to release. And the reason we're doing this, having everything available at once, is because, in my opinion, it's a little too wishy-washy for a server to say, oh, well, we're just going to do this later. I really want to show that, we have the ability to just deliver everything right off the bat. And really what I'm looking forward to seeing are guilds that form, sometime around release. And, you look at them a year later, and they're in Black Temple working on, getting ready for Sunwell. That's the real, meat of the game. And that's the kind of experience we're looking to capture. So that's all I'm going to talk about for this video. Hopefully this addressed some of the questions you guys had. Maybe a bit before I upload another video, but until then, definitely post any questions you have on the forums, and they'll be answered as soon as possible. Anyway, that's all for now, guys, and take care.